Hey, so the last few days have been, continue to be just kind of a whirlwind of mental activity and connecting dots and putting a lot of this stuff together. And I wanted to talk about the same topics I talked about in my last video, pretty much, about how this understanding, which I'm not sure how you can force understanding. I think it just happens as a result of an overall intention. It's part of like the bridge of incidents, is you get insight. It just downloads. You just get it somehow. Or someone says something that causes you to understand, something like that. I just suddenly realized in a meaningful way that I've been viewing myself as an object. And, this is probably partly upbringing, partly just being a woman in American culture. I don't know. I've really not fallen victim to a lot of stuff like this in my life, but this one has been my biggest struggle. And I'm realizing now how much it's impacted my life. And thinking about, I've been marveling this week over how immediately after I had that shift in mentality, Steve had a shift in willingness to have some kind of committed relationship with me. It seemed almost like a coincidence at first. And I was thinking about this a few nights ago, and I just thought, there's no way these two things aren't totally, it is obvious that one caused the other. I don't know how, but with Steve, shifts in my beliefs have been immediately reflected in his behavior. This has been happening since December. And when I met him in April of last year, I was in a completely different mental headspace in terms of my beliefs and my own self-worth. It's a night and day difference. And the relationship reflected that over and over and over again, up to and including this last week. And I was thinking about it and trying, I was saying, I can't see how it caused it. I can't, I had this shift in mentality, but I can't see how that changed me or why it would affect him so quickly or whatever. And now that I've had some time to reflect and I've had some more experiences with him this week now, I know what it is. It's my behavior, and I can see clearly now that this shift in viewing myself as an object that needs approval, needs to be approved of, to I'm not an object and fuck everyone else's opinion, which is my general attitude about everything else except my looks. I've always been I don't care if you approve of what I'm doing. I'll say what I want. I don't know, I've had this sort of spirit, but when it comes to me and my physicality, it's I turn into this shrinking violet. Am I okay? Is this okay? That clearly was reflected in my behavior, and the way it was reflected was that not feeling that need for approval on some level constantly caused me to stop tolerating a certain type of treatment that I received primarily from Steve, that I have just allowed to go almost completely unchecked for the entire time I've known him. I have this thing where if Steve gets if he has a certain type of reaction to me, I immediately shrink back and don't stand up for myself. It's if he comes at me and seems very irritated with me, even if I don't think I have done anything to warrant that, I would step back and sort of tolerate it, just from a half sort of half fearful and half a tolerant mother in a way. And I stopped doing that. I experienced his behavior his personality in a normal way. Like, he was just being his normal self, and things that I found totally like didn't even come to my attention as being like something that I shouldn't tolerate, suddenly were like really offensive. That's the only way I can think of to put it. This started almost immediately when I had this mental shift. And so I started reacting. I stopped shrinking. You know, if he would say something shitty, I wouldn't just be silent and like back off. I would say, you know, I'm not gonna be treated like this. Talk to me later when you're, you know, don't fucking talk to me like, you know, stuff like that. That wasn't coming out before, started coming out. And we started hashing out stuff. I started being honest about the stuff that has sucked for the whole last year for me. And I'm pretty sure that is what brought about this sudden 180 that came out of nowhere. A lot of people commented, or in some form or another expressed like sort of confusion or surprise that when he came to me and told me that he wanted to have a serious committed thing, that I didn't just like jump at the chance. And I wanted to explain that just for continuity's sake, since I feel like maybe I left that out of the last one. Like we had just mutually decided that we were like done with this. He said, I've got stuff to work on, and you know, I just said, cool, I hope it works out for you, and I hope something changes, and if it does, I'm around, you know, but I don't want to do this thing anymore. And then like 2 days later, it's like nothing was even said. It's like everything that we had talked about went out the window. Like, he decided he wanted to have a thing with me, but I'm like, yeah, but what about all the stuff you said you needed to do for yourself? And then it wasn't cool to have that conversation, and I started getting that treatment, like my concerns don't fucking matter, and like I'm being annoying by needing to understand, and other things like that I just have suddenly found with him, specifically with him. He is like my mirror for some reason. I have suddenly just found that completely intolerable. Like, to the point where I'm like, if you're gonna be like that, just get the fuck out of my life. I don't need it, and I'm not gonna be treated like that by you, especially after how fucking nice I've been to you the whole time I've known you. So anyway, I wanted to explain that. All the people that are super confused, like, just keep in mind that there are a lot of details. You know, when you have a relationship with somebody for 18 months and it's pretty much all the time, like, there are a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous. So I don't know, you're gonna have to trust me that, you know, that it would not have been the right thing for me to do, to just be like, oh yes, forget everything that we've ever said was a problem or that needed to be addressed. Yes. No. And in fact, I have since decided that he needs to just not be in my life anymore. But I really wanted to talk about this because how having this shift in mentality about this one thing that didn't seem to be related to another thing affected it and caused an outer change that didn't seem to be related to it. Like, for as far as I know, Steve wasn't refusing to be in a committed relationship with me because I saw myself as an object. Like, it's not, you know, it doesn't logically follow, but this is why ever since December, I have been so obsessed with changing all of my fucked beliefs and with looking at how I view myself and saying, what's wrong? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with this? We need to fix this. Because you can't always be totally aware of how one thing affects another. And if your life isn't exactly how you want it to be, if you are not living in a state of bliss, like most of the time, and you have all the things you want, you have all the relationships you want, the money, experiences, if you are in any way not able to reproduce in the outer reality the things you want in your mind, it seems inefficient to me to focus your attention on trying to create a specific thing or person, because all you really have to do is just say, I don't care about any of this illusion out here. It's all just a reflection. So messing with the reflection is a waste of time. All I have to do is turn it on myself, have the courage, have the patience to turn all of this focus on myself and start knocking all this stuff out one by one, because it will then reflect in the outer reality the things that you want, and you may not even be able to make a connection about how one thing brought about another thing, I don't know, until way after the fact. You know, I've got this thing with Steve as evidence. You know, I for 18 months or whatever it's been, have so badly wanted him to just say, I want to be with you too. Whether or not we then were together or we were able to work out our problems or anything, I just wanted him to say, I want you back. And he would never say that he would like dance around it. He would say other things like, I always, you know, I want you in my life. He would say other things, but it's just like this one thing that I just desperately wanted to hear. You know, I just wanted to hear, you know, we're equals. This is mutual. And I always felt fucking lesser than. And that always made me feel that way too. So, okay, I changed this thing about how I feel like an object. All of a sudden I'm, you know, no longer feeling lesser than. The thing that reflects that I'm not lesser than comes immediately, 3 days later. Anyway, you create your reality, but the way that happens is, at least one of the ways it can happen, the way it's happened for me 100% is you create your beliefs and your beliefs create your reality. That's the intermediary. You know, it isn't just you thinking about something and then it happens. That's almost like a party trick to me at this point. If you think of a specific thing and make it happen, that's great, but you can't, I mean, you can, I guess, but I don't see how a person can function and live constantly trying to create specific things. At some point, you have to fix the machine that creates all the time, and then you can just sit back. You don't have to do any of that. Like, I don't spend almost any time saying I want this specific thing and thinking about that specific thing. Like, yes, I wanted to hear those words from Steve, but I probably intended for that once or twice, said it's done, and then with my dedication to fixing my beliefs and stuff like that, it happened. It happened. The right insight came to make that outer thing happen, but it came via this belief change that affects all this other stuff in my life, and that will affect every other relationship and has affected every other relationship. So, you know, this shift came and it benefited everything. It didn't just bring about this one outer thing. It came via an insight and a mental shift. I don't know. I think probably this channel is gonna veer a lot in that direction, because I had an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday on Reddit who I was talking a little bit about this situation with Steve and, you know, my general situation with specific people and in the romantic realm. And he said something really insightful, which was that he could see that I have a belief. This was really major. He could see that from what I had talked about, that I had a belief that the people I really want don't want me back, and that the guys that do really want me and are really insane about me are never the ones I want. And I realized this is 100% reflected in all of my relationships. And it reflected, even taking in all the other things that would need to be reflected, like the fact that I don't have any issues with guys committing. You know, I could get a commitment from a guy I really wanted, but he wouldn't want me back the right, like everything is just a perfect reflection. And this little insidious belief that you know, if I really want somebody, and I even had a thought about this like 2 nights ago, I think, right the night before I had this conversation with this guy on Reddit. I was standing in my kitchen, I was making rice on the stove, just like, you know, zoning out, thinking about stuff, and I was thinking about Steve, and I'm like, you know, the people that you have feelings like this about, they're just never the ones you end up with. It's almost like when you have a good, healthy relationship with somebody, it never involves this like feeling of having really wanted somebody, which the thing with Steve and I think is, Steve and me, is kind of run its course, which is why I was thinking that. But, you know, that has been reflected in my reality, and that belief has to go. You know, the belief the person I really want isn't going to be the one that wants me back, has to be replaced with the exact opposite, and then that will happen like a magic. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and I wanted to explain a little more about the last video, which I will link to below because I have it unlisted right now, given my circumstances. I don't know, I just didn't want to have it out there publicly for some reason. It's making me feel a little uncomfortable since the thing with Steve is kind of over. So anyway, that's it for me today. Have a good one.